welcome to the panel of ZK predictions market. As mentioned, I'm Sarah Maria, advisor at Mubert, and what a pleasure to moderating this one today. So why don't we start with a nice introduction?
Yeah, let me start this. So I'm Kamesh, one of the core contributors of OpenLedger. OpenLedger is more like a specialized blockchain for AI. So in terms of, we all know about the general blockchain who talks about the performance and those kind of factors. So we are specifically designed the chain for use cases of AI. So how people can build models and then more agents and how to handle the data. So these are the three critical part of AI. So because everything is going to be AI. So that's why we thought just to build focused, chain and tooling, which can help people to build more AI stuff on chain.
So my name is Ismael. I've done a couple speaking things today, but I'm one of the co-founders of Lagrange. We're a company that focuses on the intersection of AI and ZK, and we build DeepProve, the most performant ZK machine learning library in the space, by about 2 to 3 orders of magnitude. And so, yeah, excited to be here, everyone.
Hi, everyone. My name is Arpit. I'm head of ecosystem at Aethir. Aethir is the leading decentralized marketplace for enterprise-grade GPUs.
Thank you so much for this amazing introductions. So we all know Polymarket, the predictions market. So why don't we play that kind of game here? So what do you see in the future of ZK and artificial intelligence in the next year? Let's start with the next 365 days. Because we started here. Arpit, would you like to start with that one, please?
Okay, so I think in the immediate future, in the next year, what I feel is going to become really big is verifiable inferences. And this is kind of coming from a regulatory tailwinds also, with EU AI bill coming up and a lot of pressure on different industries to kind of prove the outputs which are generated by different models without actually revealing the sensitive information or inputs or even the model details which are proprietary a lot of times, right? So I feel verifiable inference is going to be a big thing in the next year.
I love that. So I'm going to start with 3 things, 2 that are non-controversial, 1 that is maybe controversial. First non-controversial one is we're going to see ZKML function at the level of LLMs and commercially available, commercially relevant LLMs. The second one is that we're going to see a foundation model company announce an integration or partnership with a ZKML company. And the third controversial one is that we will see major cloud providers adopt ZKML for models built outside of the US.
But do you think this will happen within the 365 days we are moving forward now? Because this is a very, very controversial take, quite frankly.
Yes.
Wow, okay. Okay.
So just once a counter question here. So when you say ZKML models at the LLM level, right? So do you mean at the complete model level or at some components? Because I still feel that having a model level, ZKML setup is still computationally really intensive, right? So you can have component level implementations, but not LLM levels. What's your take?
Yeah. So what I'm saying is at the whole model level. And I can say, so the first version of DeepProve, we targeted CNNs, and we were about 600 to 700x faster than our closest competitors. And I can say that with our current roadmap and our timelines, I expect we'll have LLM support for a full LLM within 6 to 8 weeks. But yes, it will be more expensive in 6 to 8 weeks than it will be in 365 days.
I love that. Please.
Maybe I can add points like the next year is going to be more on ZK is what Ismael think maybe. So I don't want to get into the controversies, but I'll add my point of view. So basically, right now we all see general models, right? So general models are good because we are got exposure towards ChatGPT and other interesting NLM models. These foundation models are not designed for a specific use case, right? So what we are trying to build, the future, what we see, which can achieve maybe we just interesting models. Specialized models are going to be more useful, which can really solve. Let's say if I want to fire my CMO and then replace with a special model, then it is not possible right now with ChatGPT or building agents on top of it, right? Because end of the day, it is all about what kind of knowledge we fine tune with the specific model, right? If we take a general model and then fine tune more informations and data around Web3, then it became more specialized for Web3. Then building agent on top of it will solve some purpose, right? Or else we always can make some Twitter content and Twitter shit post and as well as some tokens on top of it, right? That is what we see as a last cycle. Maybe next cycle is going to be building more specialized. You see one of the use case of Kaito. We take an example of Kaito is like more specialized model where they fine-tune a lot of data. They understood what are the shit posting, what are the good posting, and then based on that they're able to evaluate the right data, right? So we are building something interesting with them. So what we see next 12 months, we see a lot of specialized model for every category. Maybe something for healthcare, something for maybe we already see a lot of special models for image and videos and various use cases. If we go deeper and deeper, every category will have a specialized model. So that is what is going to be achieved in the next 12 months is what I believe. I think that we are trying to play some crucial role of fine tuning and trying to get a lot of data on chain and make sure to be able to do proof of attribution for the data contributor. I'll talk about it in further questions here.
Thank you for sharing this one. So we heard about health tech, we heard about large enterprises, large language models, leveraging zero knowledge technology. But what about the developers? Like developing these SDKs is a lot of work. Making these docs available, like the whole development process is quite lengthy. So do you see it possible within the next 12 months to be executed? And if so, how?
Yeah, I'll jump in on this one, but let me say there's not that many ZK developers now, and in a highly controversial statement, I'm going to say I want there to be less ZK developers. I want there to be more developers using ZK, but I want there to be fewer developers having to understand how to develop a protocol using ZK.
Yes, 100%. I 100% agree. I think not just from a user perspective, but from a developer perspective, making it as easy and seamless as possible. And I think this is where artificial intelligence can truly thrive. So I really like that point. What are your thoughts on this one, Arpit?
I'm pretty aligned with what Ismail just said. And we have seen this again and again. Let's say in blockchain, right? So when we started, there was this whole new language Solidity, and people have to learn it to develop even smaller applications, right? And then whole ZK setup started, and people again have to learn new ways of doing things, right? So that's never scalable. You can never reach masses with that kind of an approach. So eventually, what will happen is that standard SDKs will have to emerge, which will make it like really, really simple for any full stack developer to build these applications without even knowing the nitty-gritties of what is actually happening in that ZK, what are ZK circuits and what are provers and verifiers. So they don't need to know all of these details. What they need to have is that standardized, well-functioning SDK, which can be reliably plugged in any application. That reliability is really important. Ease of use is important to really unlock this at scale.
Maybe I can add a couple of points. So I believe in generally in a Web3, we don't have much exposure on AI, right? So it's quite new. Last year, suddenly after ChatGPT, everybody started thinking about an AI. Of course, we're getting a lot of adoption. A lot of Web2 guys started building interesting stuff even in Web3 nowadays. So what I see to get mass adoption, we need an entire tooling top to bottom in terms of, collecting the data, verifying the data, and if any data is very much useful in the inference level, based on that, if you're able to figure out that, then we can able to reward them back. So that's a whole concept which get interesting problem that can be fixed by Web3 is what I believe, because if we always see, people used to build DeFi and other stuff, which is native use cases of Web3. If we take intersection use cases, like you see in intersection use cases like NFTs and everything, is after some point it got faded out, because intersection is always risky, right? Unless until if there is more tooling and more utility around that. What I see very similar to that, rewarding the data contributor to the model and then attributing them back, that can be tracked on blockchain. So this kind of use cases will really get more interesting peculiar use cases, because Web2 companies don't want to do that. Why? Because they have to pay billions of money for the data, because they simply scrape the data right now to build more interesting use cases. But Now, even yesterday, one guy wrote a big article around that. Like, he wrote a big article about OpenLedger and other things. And then, like, when he searched about OpenLedger in Perplexity, it given the same article what he wrote as a intelligent, right? As a short versions of that. He was saying, see, I put all the effort to write the content. At least Google used to give me traffic, but unfortunately, you don't get anything, right? You simply take the data and then using it. So this problem can be really fixed through in Web3 because of trackability, which has a natural tendency of Web3. So that is the belief which I have in next 12 months that can be fixed.
Interesting. Definitely interesting points of views of each one of you. So we talked about software developer kits, developer experience, and also how easy we want to build it for them to leverage zero knowledge technology in an era of artificial intelligence. So now let's focus also towards fragmentation, right? We don't just see fragmentation when we look towards the apps on different blockchains. We see a lot of fragmentation when we look towards the SDKs, the docs, the development itself. How do you see that happening, let's say, new predictions market in the next 3 years? Where do you see that go? Do we still see a huge amount of fragmentation when it comes to developer experience? Or do we have a few players that will basically outperform the others? What are your predictions and where do you see it go?
Okay, so I'll start with this one. So I feel in 3 to 5 years from now, we will see much stronger regulations evolve and very specific to different industries. So with that context, what will happen is that the industry will be forced to develop some standards in terms of verifiable inference and privacy preserving, AI. So industry will be kind of forced to do that with all of these regulations in space. When that happens, we definitely will see much simpler SDKs interoperable between different ecosystems. So I feel that fragmentation will not be that big an issue, at least in the AI space. And I feel that ZK verifiability and ZK AI is going to be as pervasive as we see, standards like HTTPS, right? So right now, if a website is not HTTPS, that security certificate is not there, you would consider that as a dangerous website. You would not go there, right? So it is going to be that pervasive eventually that this will become hygiene. All of these standards will have to be set. And all of these SDKs will definitely emerge. So I don't see fragmentation as we see in blockchain to be that big a problem in AI.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fantastic answer with HTTPS. I mean, in my view, the use of ZK within AI will be as ubiquitous, to your point, as the use of HTTPS within web communication. What I would add as well is we're going to see a consolidation of ZK tooling, because a lot of the proliferation of ZK tooling was created because of permissive open source licenses used on top of libraries developed by the market leaders, right? It's a common issue we see in crypto. A market leader builds technology, they make the library open source, 6 competitors fork it and say, we're gonna launch a token and use that token to subsidize adoption of our forked competitor. It just isn't a very accretive mechanism for the space to grow, because you can't finance R&D like that. And you don't promote long-term differentiated growth because everyone's just stealing each other's tech. You're not going to see that in ZKML, and you're not going to see that as the IP strategy within crypto as a whole continues to evolve. Enterprise engagement, large TradFi companies, large Web2 companies moving into the space. I mean, the internet started very open, and we moved into an IP-dominated strategy. Crypto is going to do the same thing.
Good one. Yeah, maybe. In my point of view, especially there is going to be a lot of fragmentation, no doubt about that. Or because this industry is now evolving crazy, right? Every day, the near future, OpenAI come up with something, it creates and closes hundreds of companies, right? Because next day they will come up with an interesting use cases on top of ChatGPT. I think 100 companies who got funding from VCs got shut down, right? Because of the industry is evolving, so we can't predict anything right now. Right? Maybe there are some, my CTO used to say me that, hey, we don't want to build a, special language model and tooling. One particular LLM itself will build other LLM. So then you may not need that kind of tooling even. It will do everything on its own. So we don't know, right? I've been very much curious to see, because I never seen this kind of technology innovation. I never thought about such kind of innovation, like, one machine can really be supportive than men, right? So I never thought about it. This is an interesting innovation, right? After Web3, the AI is going to be more like a Web4 now, right? We never know what will happen. So, but definitely there is going to be fragmentation. So, but there are few companies who will win, right? Who are trying to innovate, and like say big companies like Google are even struggling to fight with new startups, right? So it is going to be a lot of fragmentation. So it is no doubt about it. We all depends upon the market and liquidity, right? So we can't really focus towards building the product, unfortunately, because of the market is so volatile, and then like price is not doing well, and then we may not get the adoption, no get the attention. All these kind of factors are there, right? So I think it takes time. So right, when more enterprises and more for long-term people getting into the industry, which will allow more developers to build a long-term sustainable products, right? So or else like we have to just keep chase the narrative, right? That is what the industry will naturally want. There's going to be a lot of fragmentation. So and then we never know what will happen in the next couple of years, right? So because we see in the DeepSeek innovation, people are saying we may not need a GPU in future, right? We never know, right? There's a possibility we may not need a GPU itself, right? So those kind of discussions are going on. Maybe let's see. There is no innovations happening on neural network because we are used to have a same neural network for many years now. The data and compute, those kind of things are evolving. Like if the neural network technology can update it, then like completely you will create a new market. So we never know. So there's going to be a lot of challenges and interesting journey. Yeah, few companies will survey in AI. That is what I believe.
I liked your point on challenges to catching up with these new technologies. And I think there's somebody else that has challenges catching up with something very interesting we all love in this industry, regulations. So do you think that ZK technology can be, as example, a compliance layer in the future for artificial intelligence? And do you think that governmental parties will be able to truly work with them, truly involve them and be part of the whole journey? What are your thoughts on that? Now, handing over to you.
Yeah, so I'll jump in here. I think that we'll see regulation that is beneficial to the adoption of ZKML. I will continue to say, and I said this earlier today, when you have a government that is reliant on the output of a model from another country, developed in another country, specifically a closed source model, it is very hard to trust the veracity of that model as well as the privacy concerns. Assume you have a diagnostic model, right, being used in emerging markets that's developed in the US. How can the government of that emerging market determine whether or not, the US corporations are mining their data? Whether or not, if they don't sign a rare mineral deal, they're going to change the model and harm their citizens. I mean, there's massive concerns over societal level privacy and societal level safety if you can have an AI model operated by one country that's ubiquitously used in another. You need ZK because this is fundamentally an untrusted environment. International finance, international relations, untrusted by and large.
So I think nothing much to add there, but the whole point of my earlier answers was also that regulation is going to really enable ZK AI technology, because so ZK will be that tech which will actually implement that or make that regulation real in the industry, right? But the important thing here is that we have to ensure that this technology is so much abstracted away from the developer that they don't have to get into the complexities of implementing this. Like, it has to be made so simple that people eventually forget that this is ZK, right? So it has to get to that level. But of course, regulation is going to be a really strong tailwind behind the ZK tech in AI.
So I'm going to give a controversial response to Ismael, right? Fundamentally, this model itself is black box, right? And then whatever answer it responds, right? Based on that, we take a ZK proof, and then based on that, government can take decision, I understand. But the challenge is this model is completely, undeterministic, right? And also there is no explainability, right? For example, if you show a particular image of doctors, right? And then you can ask a model, hey, what do you think about this image? It will say, yeah, it seems to be doctors. Why? Because I'm able to see a lot of white coats, right? So that is a way. Sometimes it may respond, a lot of men, there is a bunch of men who are standing in the photo. It can explain both the way. Because what is really thing to respond this particular answer, which is a black box, Like you never know that, right? So then doing ZK proof, of course, ZK is going to be the end game. So I'm not I'm a big believer of ZK too. But more than ZK, the model itself is not like, we can't really, believe the model, because it can tell like a human. You may talk something yesterday and then you will have a different opinion today, right? Because it keeps constantly learning. Like in what basis, like, it can able to answer your query. It is completely understanding. That's why even yesterday I was just in the World Economic Forum, Sundar Pichai was talking about like what are the challenges you see of using AI to the mainstream and big companies and interesting use cases. He specifically told the problem. If, for example, a serious industries like healthcare and those kind of serious industries are government decisions and everything, we need model explainability, right? Or else, like, it is going to be screwed, right? It can answer morning one kind of response and then evening it can be different. But of course, ZK can really help you to make sure this response is generated by this particular model or not, right? So based on that, or else you can take external data source and then make sure this particular ZK proof, and then you be able to execute the output. I understand that. But model can be completely, but explainability, there is no explanatory in the model. So that is a fundamental problem, which I see. Then once that able to fix it, I think then correlating with the ZK, which will have a serious decision can be made. So what I'm trying to say, both are equally important. Like only just getting, ZK alone, it's not going to really solve the purpose, or we are not able to make a serious decision based on that.
So what I would jump in real quick, because I have to respond to that. What's the saying go? Bring your old, bring your sick, bring your weak, bring any computation you want, and ZK will prove that, right? You can prove anything in zero knowledge. It's fundamentally a mechanism to prove a deterministic computation. And so the simplest form of ZKML is simply a proof of inference, which does two things. It proves that a corresponding output corresponds to a given input in a given model. Right? So it tells you nothing about the correctness of the underlying inference, whether or not the model's hallucinating, etc. But that's just the cursory level. What you get later is when you use an interpretability or an explainability algorithm and you prove that in addition to the inference, right? Like Lime, for example. That's where I think it becomes very exciting, when you start having ZKML that includes proofs of reasoning.
Yeah, I agree with the point. What I'm trying to explain, like this model, how it really thinking about the particular response, it keeps change time to time. Because you are telling about the point, governments will make the decision based on the ZK. I agree that, right? Government will make based on the ZK proof, right? Or government can make a decision, hey, there's a ZK proof, and then based on that, will make a decision, right? That is fine. But if they depend upon the model's response, right, that is the problem which comes. I am not blaming the ZK part. I'm blaming the model part.
Right. I guess the point I'm making is that once you start having sophisticated algorithms for explainability and interpretability, then you can start having proofs of those algorithms, which we can once again constrain how the model's output's being used, such that it has a proof of correctness and a proof of explainability.
We are not there. That's the problem. So it takes billions of, every bigger companies are trying to make this model explainability. Mm-hmm. We figured something interesting. So maybe everyone can ask, like, how a small company like us, even like Google, can't really fix that problem. How come OpenLedger can fix it, right? So the problem is, like, we're able to fix one part of it. The foundation level, like, there is no explainability, we're able to do that. The fine-tune layer, right? For example, let's say, take a foundation model and then fine-tune data, whatever we use to fine-tune. That particular layer alone, we're able to bring the explainability. So that is the first step we're able to achieve right now. But bigger companies are trying to go deeper and try to become explainability for the entire foundation model. If the explainability of the model is achieved, then of course, like, this will work. I'm not going, it won't work. ZK is going to be the end game, I believe. I'm a big believer of that. But the point of, model itself is not explainable, that we are too long for that. That's what I feel.
So, Ismael, I'll just respond quickly. So ZK, so whenever we are looking at this whole solution, right? So it has to be looked as a whole. So ZK is not just one, so it's just one part of it, right? So when you look at regulation and how these models and ZK will be implemented together, so verifiability, explainability of models, all of that will become part of that regulation, right? So if there is a model which is being used in medical or in finance, of course it has to be explainable, right? And that will be the part of that whole regulation that will be written, right?
Yeah, I agree with you.
So it's a system of sorts. ZK itself, of course, if the model is a black box, then what will ZK do? ZK will just tell us, okay, this was generated by this model. That's it, right? So that's what it does, right?
I agree with you.
So what I'm saying is that this is a whole, there are different aspects to this problem, right? So there is a regulation which will set explainability laws, and the models will evolve, models will become much more specific to particular industry. And on top of that, that ZK layer will come, which will provide that verifiability.
There are orthogonal problems, right? I think what I'm positing is if you have a model that's explainable, or you have an algorithm that you trust for interpretability of the model, you can use that and prove that. So as long as you have that, which is an adjacent research area, you can apply ZK on top of it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right now, government can't make a decision using based on the LLM decision, right? The government can't do that because LLM itself is undeterministic. But after some point, as you say, explainability and ZK, everything can work together. Then, serious government decision can be made and autonomously, it can make a decision. Agents can be working autonomously, and everything is possible. But we are not there, so I think it's going to be a long journey.
I think the explainability part isn't there, but when the explainability part is there, you can just prove it.
Of course, yeah.
I love that. That was amazing.
That was good.
That was really good.
Very.
So we talked about a trustless environment where zero knowledge proofs basically will verify the data put through artificial intelligence. So it's not a trend. This is not a trend. Like zero knowledge technology has been around for more than 30 years in the space. So, but there have been trends around, like short-term trends. What would you like to leave back and what would you like to take with you towards 2030 when it comes to ZK and artificial intelligence?
Okay, so I think, I'm not sure if I understand the question correctly, but I think one thing that I won't miss definitely is what I call privacy theater, right? Privacy theater, by that what I mean is that a lot of products and companies, they're trying to portray that they're providing privacy, they're providing verifiability, but it's not mathematical, right? So it's just, trust me, because I'm saying, right? So I think that's something which definitely I won't miss in 2030. I feel that trust will be much more mathematical, much more computational, and much more objective in that sense.
Verifiable random functions as example, a completely mathematic approach. I love that.
Okay, what I would say is there's a lot of baggage in ZK over arguments over technical semantics and technical differences in a variety of products. And there is very little focus over the last 3 or 4 years on the commercial applications of technology outside of crypto. What I would like to leave behind is the endless technical debates that have permeated into the industry and move to a future where the conversation is solely over how the technology is being meaningfully applied to drive value.
So I'm trying to understand the question. The question is about what in 2030, what kind of technology will survey? Okay. I think let me tell what and all won't survey maybe, right? The technology which won't adapt AI, the chains which are not even thinking about AI, and right, anything without AI, everything will die. So especially the use cases which I see, maybe some kind of companies which they used to serve data from a model to the smart contract, and those kind of things will after some point it will become like old stories. Why? Because they have to update because the industry is progressing well. Especially chains which are not even thinking about now AI or tooling and those kind of use cases will fail. They won't be exist, and other use cases we never know, right? Everything is whether we may need a GPU or we don't want GPU, we never know. I think everything can be replaced, even entire Web3 can be replaced. We don't know. Maybe as of now, I feel like there is going to be it is going to be every day. Every day we have to evolve, or else we will die. So that is the way we are in right now because machine is even thinking faster than us. That's what I feel.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. It has been such a pleasure. Thanks, everybody, listening to this amazing conversation. Thank you, Arpit from Aethir. Thank you so much, Ismael from Lagrange, where we're all here today. And thank you so much, Kamesh from OpenLedger.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.